Sometimes people just project their fears and insecurities onto you and then you end up like living their fears and insecurities. So I just really got to a point in my life where I was like, if I don't do this, I'm going to live a life of regret.
Today's guest is an award-winning artist, entrepreneur and mum, blending music, luxury and wellness through her creative ventures. Known for her bold vision and global flair, she continues to inspire across art, business and lifestyle. Joining me on the podcast today is Layla Kardan.
I was doing business development, I was traveling, like making money, but I just wasn't happy.
When there's something you want to explore, you have that feeling, but the weight and the power of what you think you should do, ways you were told you should be, that's so loud.
If you go in with fear and second guessing and doubting and all of that, then you take away the option of it really working out for you. You know, They say never have a plan B because that means plan A is not going to work out, right? People just get also a bit swept up in this thing of manifesting and not understanding that you actually have to do the work to get there as well.
Yeah.
Manifestation is powerful. It's also cutting out the negative noise, because it's one thing to have a dream, but then if you keep saying, I can't do it, it's hard, then it's not going to happen.
Is there anything practical that you do that you find really, really helpful kind of in the moment?
It's, for me, everything's about...
All right, balancers, welcome to another episode of The Balance Theory. Today I'm joined by a woman who I've connected with here in Dubai, who's also got a background from Australia. I'm really excited to chat to her today about many things, but before we get into it, I'd like to welcome you, Layla, to the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. As I just said, I know you started your life, your early journey in Australia like I did. And another commonality between us is you're the oldest of four. I remember I actually met you sometime last year. You were speaking at an event and you had this energy about you that was really captivating. And I was like, I really want to have her on the podcast. So I had to go back to my notes from that session and I was like, there's actually so many things I want to pull out and connect with you over. So I think where's a great place to start is life in Australia and kind of bridging the gap between that and how and why you moved to Dubai. So can you share a little bit about your upbringing?
It feels like so long ago now. But I was born in Belgium and my parents are Iranian. So when the revolution happened, they were living in Europe. And I guess we were in a unique and very blessed situation in the sense that my dad could move because it was like we were never going to go back to Iran. So it was more like, okay, where are we going to move to? So we went on a little bit of like a road trip and we lived a little bit in the south of France. We lived in LA where my sister was born the first time. My dad tried to take us to Melbourne and my mum didn't love it. So then we, moved away again. I mean, I can't really keep track of all of the places we went to, but eventually my dad decided on Sydney because he just said it was the most beautiful city he had ever seen, and he's absolutely right. And, temperate climate and great business opportunities and safe and all the things that, nature, all the things he wanted for us as a family. So we stayed there. I had a beautiful upbringing in Sydney. My dad in the early 80s or late 80s rather, wanted to still explore the business opportunities between the Middle East, where we're originally from. And so he uprooted us and moved us to Dubai. But back then, Dubai was still very, I wouldn't say underdeveloped, but still
immature.
On its way to becoming the incredible city it is today. And just with the opportunities that we had as children growing up, my dad preferred for us to be in Australia. So we went back after a year and a half of living here. But that was my first exposure to Dubai. And we lived in the creek and we had on the creek and we had, I still have very vivid memories. And whenever I go to that side of town, it's very nostalgic for me. So we grew up in Sydney, my sisters and I, but Dubai was always like a second home for us because my dad was still doing a lot of business in the region and he had a base here. So we would come back and forth a lot. We would always stop over on our holidays to Europe. And then in 2001 or 2, I decided to come and be closer to my father after finishing high school. And I was like living here and enjoying the Dubai life, and like had my cousins here and everything. And then I decided to further my studies and do my master's degree here at University of Wollongong, which back then was on the beach. It was amazing. And I guess that's where, you know, the connection between Dubai and Sydney is. But I mean, yeah, all I can say is like how blessed I feel to understand what it means to come from a country like Iran, and for our parents to have decided to, you know, provide a beautiful life for us in Australia and give us all these opportunities, and also Dubai, you know, this kind of connection that we've always had, and Dubai has really been a important place for me for my career and my development. So yeah, I don't know. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. You've set the scene. Now we're going to go deeper. But I definitely always think about how, you know, like I'm an expat here as well. And for me, my husband to have picked up, left everything, come to Dubai, like we can still speak to our family every day. We can FaceTime them. Like I think about my grandparents or my parents and the way they moved around, and they hardly kept in touch. And we know what to expect here as well because of social media. You can easily get a glimpse at least of what life is like. You can research, you have access. But back in the day, it was kind of like, you know, you hear the classic story, went with a suitcase and $100 and made it work. So it's like, it's pretty amazing when you reflect on how daunting the move was for me now, but like thinking about our parents and our grandparents having to do that, let alone from a situation where then they don't have an option to go back to their main country. So it's always beautiful to share the story of families having moved around. One of my favorite ways to nourish my body from the inside out, support my energy, immunity, and gut health is through having bone broth every week. Now, I used to make this religiously every single weekend, but between running my legal consulting business, this podcast, preparing to be a mum, finding from 8 to 24, sometimes 48 hours every single weekend to make myself a weekly bone broth has become a little bit unrealistic. That's why I'm so grateful that I found the Nutra Organics bone broth range. They offer both powders and concentrates from paleo and vegan-friendly options, all made with the highest quality Australian grass-fed beef bones and certified organic pasture-raised chicken bones. They're packed with all the immune and gut-supporting benefits of a slow simmering broth, just minus the time commitment. And honestly, they taste amazing. I typically like to sip a little bit first thing in the morning. Otherwise, I just add a teaspoon into some plain rice for a bit more flavor, or my curries or my soups for an instant gut-loving and immunity-boosting hit. If you're looking for a trusted and time-saving way to start nourishing yourself from the inside out, the Nutra Organics Bone Broth range is honestly a game changer. And right now you can get 15% off. Head to nutraorganics.com.au. The link is also in the show notes, and use the code The Balance Theory at checkout. Let's get back into today's episode. I remember you sharing kind of from a very cultural point of view what your upbringing was like in the terms or in the sense of what you were expected to be or do with your life. Are you able to kind of shed a bit more light on that? Because I think it's really important context to kind of where you've evolved to.
Yeah. You know, my father is Swiss educated, so he is a lot more open-minded, I would say, than like your typical traditional Middle Eastern man. But still, culturally, it's not really accepted for your daughter to be an entertainer. You know, it was kind of like, it's more of a status thing, or you know, something that is kind of frowned upon or looked down on. It's not like maybe in some other cultures where artists are celebrated, and, you know, so yeah, I did have this kind of pressure not to be able to explore that side of who I was, you know, even though my parents pushed me to do classical ballet and play the piano and all of those things. But when it came to singing and being on stage and making a career of it, it wasn't supported at all. And it was also shunned, not just by them, but from the community. And so it was something that I felt like I didn't have the gumption or the guts to really like push back against what everybody was saying. And so I put that aside, and I really truly didn't even believe I could do it, you know. Obviously there's a lot of internal dialogue that goes on with saying like, oh yeah, but then no one's going to marry you and no one's going to love you and no one's going to, things that have been taught to you or said to you all your life. So, but you know, I grew into my own person, and I realized that my desire for music and sharing song and making music was much greater than like the voices of the community or even pressure from my family. So I pushed through it, and you know, that saw me at loggerheads at times with people in my family, and I truly still believe that people come from a place of love and good intention. But you know, sometimes people just project their fears and insecurities onto you, and then you end up like living their fears and insecurities. So I just really got to a point in my life where I was like, if I don't do this, I'm going to live a life of regret. I'm going to be so unhappy and unfulfilled. And I would watch all of these documentaries where people would talk about how, you know, they like their biggest regret in life is not fulfilling their dreams and aspirations and the things that they really wanted to do. And that's the thing that stands out in their life, you know. So I just didn't want to be one of those people, and I wanted to make the most out of this gift, because I really truly believe the life is a gift and that you have to savor every moment. And if that means doing what you love and what you're passionate about against all odds, and you know, not even considering like people say it's foolish, but I feel like if you go in with fear and second guessing and doubting and all of that, then you take away the option of it really working out for you. You know, they say never have a plan B, because that means plan A is not going to work out, right? And that's kind of the attitude I went into it with. It's like, everyone's like, but you're not going to make any money, but you're not. And not only did I make money, but I made a lot more money than I did when I was working in a corporation with a master's degree. You know? Yeah. So yeah, it was tough to go against these cultural ideas and values and things that like are projected onto us, and maybe are a little bit archaic beliefs, you know, they're not really relevant in today's world. But I can tell you too, it did affect some relationships where some men were just like, couldn't handle it, didn't enjoy having, you know, like a potential partner who was in the limelight singing on stage for other people. You know, not everybody has the capacity to handle that, and that is a truth. But then you just don't end up with that person, right?
You're not put on this earth to make everyone happy. Right? You just got to find.
I mean, life is a series of choices. Like, clearly, I'm not going to go with someone who carries those beliefs and is going to stop me from enjoying the thing that makes me happiest, you know? So yeah.
It's actually very inspiring, your story. And you've just kind of given us the short version, which I'm sure took years to unfold. But it's so true that every single one of us have these moments in life, and I kind of look at them as opportunities to, you know in your soul when there's something you want to explore, you have that feeling. But the weight and the power of what you think you should do, ways you were told you should be, these limiting beliefs or things that were impressed in your mind from when you were growing up, that's so loud that often that calling or that instinctual feeling of something you want to explore, it's just weighed down, and you just think, oh, that's just a dream. You know, that's just something that I would like to do, and then it evolves into this regret. I think what would be really interesting, I don't know if there was like a key moment for you where you made a conscious decision, like, no, I'm going to explore this, or was there a key moment you really unlearned something? Like, was there a real turning moment for you that helped you, or that you could maybe share that would inspire someone listening to actually make that pivot or just back themselves in what they want to do?
I mean, I've been doing a lot of inner work for many, many years. I remember like I was 16 and I caught a train to Wollongong by myself to go to Vipassana at like a Buddhist temple. And back then it was like people didn't even know what yoga was, you know? It was just like, my mom's like, what do you mean? What are you doing? And I come from an Iranian family. I'd never gone like more than 2 days without meat, and I did like 5 days no meat, 5 days no talking, yoga, breathing, like sleeping, no phone. And, all of those things, I guess, like gave me the tools and strength over the years to get to arrive to that point, because it does take a lot of guts. But I think the defining moment or the pivot was I was really depressed because I was, not really living my truth. I wasn't in alignment with who I was really supposed to be.
What was your corporate job at the time?
I was a strategist, and I was doing business development. I was traveling, like making money, but I just wasn't happy. It wasn't fulfilling for me. And in the end, I was like, I can't continue like this. And from one day to the next, I decided I'd be a singer, but I also just felt like I really needed to reconnect with myself. I wasn't in a good place mentally. So I worked really hard, saved a lot of money, put everything in a storage, and just traveled for a year. That really helped me get to a good place, have stories to tell, work on music. And then I did an NLP course, and I did a master practitioner course. And I feel like that really helped rewire my brain.
For those that don't know, that's neuro-linguistic programming.
Programming, yeah. And I did it here in Dubai. It was a 10-day course. And it just it broke a lot of my limiting beliefs, and I reframed a lot of things, old stories I was telling myself.
Could you share one?
I mean, there's so many, but that I'm not good enough, or that if I do this, people are going to see me as a working girl, because that was something that culturally was repeated all the time. And yeah, I just reframed everything, and I started asking myself the questions yeah, people could perceive it that way. Then some people could also see it as an inspiration. Some people could also see it as a Middle Eastern woman from a somewhat conservative background defying the odds and doing what she wants and living her truth. And I did it independently also, without doing it on anyone's terms or rules or whatever. And I feel really blessed for that as well, because I was in control. And just things like, you haven't had training, because I hadn't had any formal training. But then some of the greatest artists in the world are not even the greatest singers, right? And so a lot of it's about storytelling and being authentic and being real. And, of course, you got to have a good package and all of that. But it was a lot of reframing. And then the other thing was okay, maybe some people would see it as bad, but what if I could be a force for good? What if I can then use my voice to do good things? And all of a sudden I'm singing for UNICEF at galas and going to, refugee camps with UNICEF. And then I'm okay, I'm doing good things. So I don't have to let that story take over my mind and make it true.
And did you have an experience where people in whether it's your family or your community, now after the fact actually are really proud of you and inspired by you? It's a full circle moment where you're in this position where you hold yourself back because of fear of what they would think. And really that's just them projecting how they would conduct their own life. But then when you actually take that action, it inspires people and kind of breaks them out of this limited way of thinking that they've been looking at too. I think that's also it's just such a nice reflection piece, right? For you to say to your younger self, or think now how much has changed when you could have made that decision when you were at that fork in the road, when you were feeling depressed of no, I'm just going to stay small. I'm not going to follow this dream.
Yeah. Of course, that moment. But I never did it for that recognition. But of course it feels good, and ultimately you want the people who you love and love you back, to be proud of you. But it wasn't like a defining moment for me. But it does make me happy. Of course, at the beginning, they were like, don't use the family name and don't use this. Now they're like, do you know my niece? Or do you know my so-and-so? And like, do you know Layla? You know, or whatever. And it's cute. I like it.
Yeah, I love that. By the end of the day, once I've ticked off tasks, replied to emails, kept it all together, sometimes I need to remind myself that I need a minute to myself too. So once everything's done, I grab my London dairy ice cream, sit on the couch, just me, a spoon, and that moment I've been waiting for. It's my little ritual, and honestly, it hits a spot every time. If you haven't carved out a moment just for you today, this is your sign to do it. You deserve it. You also talk about how you funded your own first album.
Yeah.
Was this like post your 12-month travels? Was it a part of that saving? Was it something that came a bit later? Can you tell us about that? Because that's also like you have to back yourself when you're at that point.
Yeah, unless you have someone backing you, which I didn't have. But no, I sold every piece of jewelry, handbag, everything that I owned to be able to fund my my album. And I even I took a loan from a friend and I gave a check back, and I said, I'm going to pay you back and I'm going to take this check back within a year. And it was like, okay, let's see. But I did. I paid it back in less than a year. And that was because I made a lot of money from performing. And so it was a great investment to make, and it wasn't easy, but I did it. I literally sold everything I owned.
Yeah. No, it's humble beginnings, you know, and it's a testament to your self-belief and your passion. You know, you don't just do that for nothing you don't believe in. Given the kind of journey you've been on, which is like you've grown up, ticked the boxes, gone to uni, sat in corporate. I had a very similar experience, worked as a lawyer, then sort of broken away and found all these passions and allowed yourself to be more than one thing, right? Or allowed yourself to be more than what you labeled yourself as, or what your family labeled yourself as, or what society labeled yourself as. How do you define success today?
I mean, I'm a very goal-oriented person, and I love to achieve and produce and create. Like, I feel like when I'm not doing that, I don't feel at my ultimum. But at the same time, now that I'm a mother, I think my idea of success is truly just having a happy, healthy family. You know, I think your goalposts change a little bit when you become a mother and you have a family. I mean, success has never been like measured by monetary values to me anyway. It's just about, for me, understanding like this life is precious. I want to make the most out of it. I want to create and produce and be an active member of society who serves and gives back. These are the main things. Of course, I want to be financially independent and capable and, you know, enjoy nice things in life, but it's not the biggest driver for me. Now that I'm a mom, ultimately, I just want peace of mind and safety and health for my family.
Yeah, beautiful. We're definitely going to dive into the motherhood angle a little bit deeper. Can you tell the audience a little bit about, you have like holistic clinics and centers here that do like a whole bunch of different amazing things. Can you share a little bit about those?
So, part of the journey has been like, you know, as a live performer, when COVID happened, it really took me back to the drawing board. I'm like, okay, how am I going to make money now? I've got to get creative. And my husband and I, at the time, we weren't married, but we went into a venture where we opened our first cabaret together. And that was a dinner and show. Yeah. And it was really amazing and risque and fabulous and beautiful. And after that, we opened another 3 restaurants in Abu Dhabi, and again, beautiful concepts. And we love creating concepts from scratch and considering everything from the brand and the tone of voice and the colors. And we love that. We're very artistic people. But then at some point we realized that this is a conduit for like unhealthy practices, and we had just become like a young family, and we had our son, and we were like, this isn't conducive to a healthy life, because you've got to work late and work all days of the week, and there's always a problem. And we just realized that that wasn't, like I said before, like life is a series of choices, and that wasn't the way that we were going to live as a happy family. So we decided to then get out of that business and get into wellness. And so that's where Contrast was born. And it was born literally out of our own, like fulfilling a void that we found in the market. Is like we would go to infrared saunas that weren't clean, that weren't well maintained, that didn't have good services, and we would pay a lot for it. And I was like, this isn't making wellness accessible. So we decided to open Contrast, which is it's an infrared sauna, contrast therapy, as well as ice bath studio, where we also have massage and IV therapies.
I'm just relaxed hearing you talk about it.
Yeah, it's so relaxing. It is a really zen environment. But what we've done is try to make it accessible and inclusive, and very fair pricing where people can access it regularly and make it part of their wellness routine. And I'm really proud to say that we opened our first studio in May of 2023, and in December of 2024 we opened our fourth branch.
Amazing.
So we moved quickly on the expansion, and we continue to expand today. And it is the most beautiful business I've ever done, because I keep getting messages from people saying like, you've changed my life. I've gone from having like hypertension to being completely in the clear now. I sleep better at night. My skin conditions, my flare-ups have completely gone. I don't have diabetes anymore. And I guess like at the end of the day, you want to make sure that whatever you do, and the way we like to operate is that we do everything with intention. And when you have a business that makes people feel good and has a positive impact on community, it just makes everything feel much better,
Yeah. And what I love most about the kind of story you just shared and the two kind of different businesses you've had is it's been a very conscious creation of what kind of life you want to live and what mirrors your current values. And I think this is actually a really interesting thing for people to think about, whether they're in a career or like a job, working for someone else, or whether they are doing their own business, like actually giving yourself that permission for that to evolve with your changing self. Because I always thought to myself, like, how am I going to graduate as a lawyer and then do this for 30, 40, 50 years? Like that freaked me out. And I just think those days are gone. Like I don't think people are tied to careers for as long as what they once were, because we have so much opportunity, because we have so much access. And I'm very grateful to live in a time like that. But it also presents this amazing opportunity. I mean, everyone listening to this show is interested in self-growth and self-development. So their changing self is not foreign to them. But to actually go one step further and then start to curate your work, which is where you spend most of your time, or your business, to align with not only your values, but the life you want to live. So not working late at night or getting up early or having a space where you can actually feel relaxed. Like that is actually a very, very powerful way to create your world. And I wanted to ask you, and I suppose this is sort of off the back of that, becoming a mum and now working in this business, I guess, has that now shaped your idea of self-care and the way you look after yourself as a mum, like different to before?
I think I was a lot more focused on self-care prior to becoming a wife and an entrepreneur and a mother, like definitely along that journey, some things have to give. And so, yeah, I would love to give myself more self-love and self-care, but I'm not the only priority right now. But of course, like the access to this world, I mean, I've been very immersed in it for many, many years. It's not new to me.
Sure.
But yeah, when you own a studio and can go for a sauna and a massage anytime, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
But the irony is that I don't, because I'm so busy, But yeah, it is like people think like, oh, it's easy to say because, you know, you have all these opportunities, but really we made those opportunities for ourselves. And I'm curious to know for you. So like you went from being a lawyer to what were your passions?
So I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be a mum. I would love to have 4 kids. I'm one of 4. I really love having a big family. So a couple of years ago, I was sitting in my corporate job. I was looking at people above me who are the jobs I should be aspiring for, and I wanted none of it. Nothing against,
Of course,
their
all
careers.
due respect, yeah.
But I knew I wanted to be a hands-on mum. But I really did enjoy the work I was doing. I just really hate corporate. I hate the corporate environment. I hate
Like
the
being in
idea
jail.
of, like you have to clock in this time, clock out this time. I'm a really productive, efficient person, and I just never understood why the flexibility wasn't there. So to kind of buffer out this gap or this lack that I was feeling, I started the podcast because I felt like I wasn't connecting with people in a genuine way. And I love having conversations and I love telling people stories and learning from people. I'm a really curious person. So that depth was missing for me in corporate. So I started that while I was still working. And for anyone listening, you don't have to wait till you can do it full time. Like just start your things on the side. That actually made me enjoy my job more because I was putting less pressure on it for it to be the one thing that satisfied me. You know, I was actually like speeding out of there to get home and like start recording and all those things.
Yeah.
And then along that journey, I was doing some side businesses in e-commerce. My husband, he was a chiropractor. We had a few clinics in Australia. So we've always kind of dipped our toes into entrepreneurship. It was only when I moved to Dubai about 3 years ago, I just became way more immersed in this entrepreneurial space because everyone is here creating and building, and it's just so inspiring. And I found this opportunity to leave corporate, still work as a lawyer, but on a consulting basis.
Nice.
So now I have my own business where I just kind of work like a fractional in-house counsel, project basis with a bunch of different clients. And I love it because I can actually work in their businesses with them, help them grow. Some of them I have equity in. So it's a very different model to, salary job. But this move for me was incredibly intentional. A, because the podcast is important for my own personal growth and I wanted the flexibility to grow it and work on it more. B, because I knew I wanted to have kids. So I wanted to have a career that would have allowed me to be flexible and actually be at home with them, but then not have to sacrifice career trajectory. And I just feel so grateful. Again, it's not luck. I really don't believe in luck. I think you create your own reality and intention is behind everything you do. But I just feel very grateful to be in a position where the kind of life, and I say this because we've recorded this before I've had the baby. So this might come out after or just before. I haven't had the baby yet. So I don't know what that combination looks like. But at least I know I'm working and responding to myself only at the moment.
Yeah.
So your story also, like it hit that chord with me. Like you were very intentional about what life do I want, what aligns with me, and how do I make that my reality?
Yeah. It's really hard because people feel like really bogged down by struggles and pain to be able to like look above it. And, maybe from the outset, like someone might look at me and like, well, she's got all the opportunities because she was lucky in life, but I really wasn't. I went through a lot of trials and tribulations to get to this position. And I continue. It's not an easy road being an entrepreneur. It's not an easy path being a mother and doing all the things that I'm doing while still performing and still, so I can generate for the family. It's a lot of pressure. But I'm in control. I chose this for myself, and I think in one of my songs, I say, you can dream it and you can be it, because like I really believe it. I'm not saying like be unrealistic and think like I'm going to be a princess, even though that might happen for you. But, I personally don't have those kind of ambitions, but I know like this is the life I want. This is the kind of, even to the point where I'm like, okay, I want to have a kid that goes to this school, but I don't want to sit in traffic for an hour. So what am I going to do? It's not just about dreaming it. I actually make things happen to get to a more comfortable stage in my life. I want to sing on this stage. I want to be able to go to this. I set out the path for myself and then I make it happen. You know, I think people just get also a bit swept up in this thing of manifesting and not understanding that you actually have to do the work to get there as well.
Yeah.
Manifestation is powerful. It's a real thing. I
Very
believe
real.
in it.
Yeah.
And you have to do the work.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I want to say is, because I've been in this position where I've looked at someone and what they've achieved for themselves, and it almost makes me, it used to make me feel like lesser than or incapable, or that's not
or
possible
triggered
for
maybe.
me.
Yeah.
Exactly. When you can flip that and you say that person's done it, that's evidence as to what's possible for me. It opens up a world.
Yeah.
But back to what you were saying, everything is these two things. The first is clarity. So when people talk about manifesting, they're thinking about exactly what they want. That's the clarity. It has to be followed by the second step, which is aligned action.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is holding that aligned action when your reality looks different, right? It's trusting and knowing you're heading in that direction because you have that clarity despite what your reality looks like. I could sit here and tell you where I see the podcast going, the types of people I'm going to connect with in the future, but these are no different to the thoughts I had after my first episode. You know, I've held that vision, and it could have taken 1 year, it might take 5, it might take 10, but in my head, I know where it's going. I have that purpose that sits behind it, and I'm showing up like it's going to happen. And that's really important, and that's the difference, I think, between you feeling like that's not possible for you and it is. And you're right, like a lot of people will get swept up in the woo-woo-ness, right? It gets this kind of wrapper on it that it's far-fetched and it's a dreamy thing to do, but it is so powerful, like when you actually
See it unravel.
when you see it
Yeah.
working, and the speed at which it works is insane.
It's insane.
Like my husband and I have actually had a very recent experience with it, and it's like more in what he's doing with his work. But when you take the time to do that, it's crazy. Have you got any like stories you can share about things you've manifested or created outside of like your life in general?
No, even as a kid, like I was like, I'm going to be a singer, and I became a singer. I used to say when I was very young, I'm going to have my own cabaret.
Wow.
Guess what? I opened my own cabaret, and not just that, I partnered with Denise Faye. She is like the queen who choreographed Chicago. She was in the movie Chicago, Burlesque 9. She was Cher's tour director. I mean, these are big things, but I had this vision from very young. Or like, I always had this like idea that I would have this kind of bathhouse spa and my own products. And I have that now. And sometimes when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, this has all been like a series of work and thoughts and dreams that have gotten me here with aligned action, as you very aptly mentioned. But I mean, it's also cutting out the negative noise, because it's one thing to have a dream, but then if you keep saying, I can't do it, it's hard, then it's not going to happen. You've got to be so clear and so precise with what you're asking for and what you want, that there's no chance for it to get muddied, along the way.
Yeah, and that's actually a very difficult, often unspoken part when you're growing. And like I've done a lot of work too, both with a therapist and in my own curiosity, to unravel a lot of my limiting beliefs. And even still today, like they still come up and present in different ways. I see them now. I'm not at their mercy, put it that way. But it's really important to actually have the tools to cope with when that comes up, because that's life. Like, things, you're going to have people doubting you. You're going to have bad days.
You're going to be triggered. You're going to be reactive.
New things are going to come up that you're going to have to deal with as you progress and you expand and you have different experiences. So with everything you've learned, and I know, like I always say, there's no days off when you're in believing in yourself. Like you really have to show up every single day for yourself. But in terms of dealing with these, let's just say triggers or limiting beliefs, or is there anything practical that you do that you find really, really helpful kind of in the moment?
For me, everything's about reframing. I mean, like when you become a mom, a lot of things then trigger you and you think, oh my God, all this work, because you now have a mirror, right? So it's obviously easier to be like okay with yourself when you're alone, and then put a husband who's also your business partner and a child into the mix that's dependent on you and not always like compliant. Not that I'm looking for an obedient, servant, but like it's challenging, especially when you're tired and overworked. But for me, reframing is everything. So like that conversation, sometimes I'm like, this is so hard. But then I'm like, this is actually so beautiful and breezy. And what was much harder for me is what you mentioned, is like working on someone else's time, being a slave to somebody else, and working so hard just to make someone else richer. All of these efforts that I'm making is because a couple of things. I wanted to prove to myself that I can do anything I set my mind to. That was a big thing for me. And number two, or B, is that I want my kid to look at me and say, well, if my mom can do it, I can do it too. And I want to be a walking example of what that means. I don't want to just tell him you can be whatever you want and not actually be doing what I want myself, like I'm still making music. People are like, oh, but how can he manage? But I make the time for it. I mean, I give up social engagements. I give up other things, but I want to do this, so I can do it. And I'm just showing him that I can do it. And that's really important to me. And then lastly is to have, financial freedom, as that's really important to me. And for me, this is the road to get there.
Yeah.
And so it just needs constant check-in. And whenever things get really hard and you get down and, I feel like just that reframing and saying to myself, like, A, look at what I've achieved so far. Remind myself of those things. B, remind myself of the blessings that I have. Perspective is everything. Like everything. When you look at what's happening in the world and you think like how blessed we are to live in safety and security, that's already so big. Just that in itself. And then change the script, stop saying, oh, I'm a victim, I'm this happened. No, I'm actually a freaking champion.
No, I love it. Honestly, I'm the biggest champion for the idea of being mindful of the story you tell yourself, and also knowing you're not tied or married to the story that you have always told yourself. It's really powerful actually when you reflect on anything you're doing and what the subtext is. And that is just simply what often we think, oh, I'm worried what this person's going to say, or the community, or this. It's not even what they're going to say. It's actually just what you think they're going to say, right? And you're not a mind reader and you can't tell what everyone is actually thinking of you 24/7.
But even if they say it, who cares?
Right.
Like at the end of the day, are they tucking you into bed? Are they paying your bills? No. So
would you take advice from them in other aspects of their life? I think is an important one too. Like often we're so worried about the way people criticize us when we wouldn't even go to them for advice.
And you don't even see them. Like I got to learn that a lot from being on stage, and so like everything is about validation and what people think and how they react. But actually, when you go out into the world with confidence and conviction in yourself and not seeking validity in others, people just buy what you're saying anyway. It really is, it is a truth. I mean, if you go in like cautious and scared and worried, then you're actually going to cop it worse. It is just what it is. But also like I've learned, this is such a rude expression, but opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. Like literally everybody can give you their opinion, and that's just their opinion. You've got to listen to your inner voice, which is stronger than anybody else's opinion, and to be able to do what's right for you. And I feel like people don't always have your best interest at heart. They don't. It's not that they want to be bad, but it's just that maybe they have fears that they're projecting onto you.
Yeah. And there's this beautiful saying that people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. So really like latching on or placing so much importance on that is robbing you of your own capacity to be that person for yourself. But this is such an important topic, like the way you speak to yourself, and you can't have days off. Like you have to. That doesn't mean you can never have a bad story in your mind or a negative thought. It means you've got to be very proactive, like catching it and being onto it.
But I do have days off because sometimes I'm just like so mentally exhausted and I can't. So I'm just like, okay, today is a day for me to just like veg out, and I'm gonna watch a cheesy show on Netflix, and I just don't need to be an overachiever today.
100%.
And that's okay.
Yeah, let me restate what I meant when I say you have no days off. You have no days off believing in yourself.
Yeah.
So actually having compassion and being flexible and allowing yourself to not be at 100% every day, like that's all really important for you not to burn out and be unrealistic, fall into that perfectionist mentality. I'm more meant, you know, whenever you have negative thoughts or limiting beliefs, it's flipping the script. It's being mindful that you're having those thoughts. That's what you can't take a break from, because then those things get louder and they become the default, which is why they were there in the first place. You know?
I think a good way to look at it, especially if you're a mother, because you'll understand, is that they're just like, when your kids are annoying, they come and they're just like there to annoy you for a bit. And then they're going to disappear, but you'll still love them like you love yourself, you know? And that's just, you just got to watch them come and go. And slowly with the reframing, they don't come anymore, you know?
Yeah, they definitely find a new home.
Yeah, they find a new home.
Well, they come to you in different words.
Yeah, sure.
Layla, thank you so much for sitting with me today, for sharing a lot about yourself and your journey, the work you've done, the life you've created for yourself. I find it really inspiring.
Thank you.
And I need to come check out Contrast because I've not yet been.
Well, not now. And it's not safe for pregnant women. Just, you know,
I'll come in my post section.
Postpartum, you come for a nice lymphatic drainage massage. And
I will.
A place of reset and relaxation and recovery, and it's all about you.
I will. But thank you so much for sharing your time and energy with me
and
today.
good luck.
Thank you.
I'm just so happy when I see like woke pregnant women who are going to, you know, give their kids all of the possibilities in the world. You know, like when you have this mindset, you know, you have the opportunity to share that wisdom and those gifts with the child that is going to really bloom and blossom in this world. So good luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.